Most people moving from California make the exact same mistake. They shop for a house and not a life. They compare square footages, finishes, and whether the kitchen island will survive that dinner party. And they almost never ask the one question that matters most. And that is, how do I want my life to really feel? I've been selling real estate for over 2 decades, and there's one thing I have learned. The wrong house in the right neighborhood usually works out. But the right house in the wrong neighborhood is usually a slower kind of regret. And that's one thing that never shows up on closing day. It shows up approximately 11 months later, standing in that beautiful kitchen, asking that one question, why does it still feel like I live in California? And today, I'm going to take you to the one neighborhood that most Californians have never even heard about. And for those who actually find it, they generally stop looking anywhere else. But before you fall in love with it, I'm going to tell you exactly who should not buy in here. Because only half the job is to make sure that you find the right house. The other half is making sure you don't end up in the wrong one. Hi, I'm Chris Raynor, and I made that move from California myself, which means I've already seen most of the mistakes I'm trying to warn you about now, so you don't have to. And the one thing you will hear me say in every single consultation is people don't buy houses. They buy lifestyle. Bedrooms and bathrooms, well, that comes after that. So before we talk any features, let's discuss whether Galena Forest Estates is the kind of lifestyle you're after, or just a really convincing zip code. The Galena Forest Estates actually sits right off of Mount Rose Highway, right between Reno and Lake Tahoe. It's only a 15 to 20 minute drive to the Reno Tahoe International Airport. It's approximately 20 minutes from downtown Reno, and it's only 10 to 15 minutes from Mount Rose Ski Resort. And a little past that, with being only about a 20 to 25 minute drive from your front door, you could be sitting in Incline Village. Which means on a good day, you could ski a few runs, grab lunch in South Reno, and still make a flight. All of this before the Californians have even found their parking. But there is an honest downside. Nothing here is walkable outside of those trails. So if your idea of a good Tuesday afternoon involves walking down to the coffee shop, this is not your neighborhood. But if your idea of a good Tuesday involves a four-wheel drive truck, a long driveway, and possibly a shovel, this just might be it. And that's just the geography. Californians stop searching once they actually find this neighborhood, and it has nothing to do with the commute. And it has everything to do with what's growing on the property. Trust me, it's all legal. But it also turns out nobody planted it. But before we dive deep into this, let me save some of you a lot of time. And that's because this neighborhood's not for everyone. So if you want restaurants within walking distance, don't buy here. Also, if you hate snow, don't buy here. And if mowing a half an acre of grass sounds like a personal attack, don't buy here. And if wildlife wandering through your front yard sounds scary, look elsewhere. You will see deer regularly. You're also going to see coyotes occasionally. And every so often, you will find a black bear that has strong opinions about your trash schedule. That's not a metaphor, it's just Tuesday afternoon. Still with me? Good. Because here's the part that almost nobody expects, and that's the history. Most of the neighborhoods around Reno were built by a developer who had a backhoe and a vision. Galena wasn't. The forest was already here long before anybody thought about building a house. Back in the 1860s, this stretch of the Sierra was one of Nevada's busiest lumber operations. It had 11 sawmills operating nearby at the industrial peak. It was supplying lumber to Virginia City after silver was discovered on the Comstock, which means the same trees that could shade your future backyard once helped build one of the richest boomtowns in American history. Try getting that story out of a subdivision named after whatever wildflower the developer liked best. Now, let's forward to 1979. Because instead of clear-cutting the land, developers actually started to build houses inside of the trees that were already there. 40 plus years later, that one decision is why living here in those houses still feels like it's out in the mountains, instead of a subdivision feeling like it's wearing a flannel shirt. Hey, if you like this content, hit that like and subscribe button. We put videos out every single week about what it's like to live, work, and play in Reno. So the history's a nice story, but it doesn't really pay your mortgage, does it? So let's talk about who actually ends up living here and who shouldn't. Who actually thrives here are the buyers who fall for the Galena tend to be business owners, physicians, executives, retirees, and remote professionals. They usually tell me some version of the exact same sentence. I don't want to feel like I live in another subdivision. I want to actually feel like I live in the mountains. And here's a little detail that a lot of sites aren't going to actually tell you. And that is, not all of Galena lives the same way. And that's because higher homes in the subdivision actually get more shade, more winter, and cooler weather. And homes closer to the south actually have milder weather and they're a lot closer to shopping. It's a few minutes of driving difference. And it's also the difference between four-wheel drive being a preference and four-wheel drive being a requirement. And an honest downside to this is, either way, you're still going to own a snow shovel. That part's not optional. Consider it a little welcome gift from the mountains. But back to the homes. Almost every home in Galena is custom built. You're going to find mountain lodges, mountain modern, timber frames, and traditional estates. A little bit of everything, because when nobody's building from the same 4 floor plans, no house looks like their neighbors. The home sizes in here generally run from about 2,500 square feet to upwards of 8,000 square feet. Price ranges in here start from about $1.1 million, climbing past $6 million for premier estate lots. And the honest downside, and I'm going to say this very clearly, it's not your budget relocation neighborhood. So if you're optimizing purely for the lowest cost per square foot, then Reno's got plenty of neighborhoods we can have that discussion about. Galena's where you go when the conversation has moved beyond price and on to everything else. And speaking of almost everything else, here's the part about relocating from California that catches almost every one of my clients off guard. And it has nothing to do with the house that you're buying. It has more to do with what a lot of people failed to warn you about. Let me tell you a little story. I had a client last year, a business owner moving from the Bay Area and buying in Galena. He sold enough real estate in his life to think that he understood the escrow process. However, he found out quickly he did not understand the 2-state escrow process at all. His California sale and his Nevada purchase were scheduled and supposed to close 4 days apart. They ended up with 2 different title companies and 2 different sets of paperwork. They also ended up with 2 states worth of rules about what a wire transfer is allowed to do to your blood pressure. And that's the exact kind of problem that my wife Cindy is prepared to handle. She's spent over 34 years in both escrow and lending. So when a deal has to move across 2 states without falling apart in the middle, she usually is the reason why it doesn't. We coordinated both of these closings, closing all within 6 hours of each other. And the best part of it was he didn't lose 1 night of sleep worrying about logistics. Just allegedly what to do with the 3-car garage when he's never owned more than 1 car. Okay, let's get into the part that changes most people's minds. And that's the lots. Here's the number that ends most conversations. because most neighborhoods around Reno come with about 1/5 of an acre. In the Galena Forest Estates, a half an acre is just standard. And 1 to 2 acre wooded lots in Galena is pretty common. In parts of California, $1 million buys you a patio and a fence you can touch from your kitchen window. Here it buys you actual trees, actual privacy, and neighbors far away that you won't have to accidentally become a character in their Saturday afternoon barbecue. An honest downside to this is that same privacy means you're doing your own landscaping, your own snow removal, and your own wildlife negotiations. Space is not free. It's just simply priced differently here than California charges for the absence of it. And for that average Tuesday afternoon, I want you to picture something. Coffee out there on the deck, no freeway noise, no sirens, and possibly the family of deer who wander through. They will be entirely unbothered by your presence, and possibly even your dogs. You get to ski Mount Rose in the winter, paddleboard in Lake Tahoe in the summer, and what it'll be like to grill dinner while the sun is christening through the pines. That's not a brochure. That's just what your normal week's gonna look like when your commute stops being the center of attention. You will literally feel like you live at Lake Tahoe and only be minutes from town. And after over a decade of doing this in Reno, there's one thing I can tell you. I never get phone calls 6 months later going, I wish I would have bought an extra bedroom. That conversation simply has never happened with anybody who moves into this neighborhood. Instead, I get calls from a couple who moved from the Bay Area. A few months in, they just called to play catch up. One of them said something I still think about, saying, Chris, this is the first time in years I've actually hear silence instead of constant traffic. Another client actually told me I forgot what it was like to see stars until we've moved here. People think they're relocating here to save money, and honestly, some of them are. But what I find is most of them are just simply moving here to get their life back. And that's why when most people ask me where should I live, I never start with bedrooms. I usually start with one question, and that is, when you wake up, how do you want your life to feel? And that's because the right house in the wrong neighborhood leaves you with the feeling of, why did I move? But the right neighborhood changes how you live. The Galena Forest Estates is not for everybody. But if you made it this far without wincing at the word snow shovel or bear, it might be right for you. So if you're relocating from California and you're still trying to figure out which one of our 100+ neighborhoods fits how you live, and not just what you can afford, that's the exact conversation my team and I have every single week with people looking to relocate. We don't start just sending you listings. We start by having a comprehensive understanding of your lifestyle. Then we narrow the map down to which neighborhoods actually fit it. So book your strategic call at www.meetwithchris.com or simply scan the QR code on the screen. And if there's a neighborhood in Reno that you would actually like me to do a video on, drop it in the comments. Odds are, I've probably already helped somebody move into that neighborhood. I'm Chris Raynor, your go-to realtor for all things Reno. We'll see you on the next one.